Hello, I am Nurbek Savitakhunov, and these are the news from Kazakhstan. President Nursultan Nazarbayev met with the heads of law enforcement agencies in Astana. He believes the death of soldiers at a frontier post in the Almaty region is an act of terrorism.
I believe this was an act of terrorism. Perhaps it happened because of internal conflicts, but it is too early to talk about it. The barracks and officers' buildings were burnt down, with bodies found during debris removal. I have ordered to carefully examine the circumstances and causes of this incident. Appropriate measures will be taken after that. The head of the nation also reported that he ordered to set up a special commission to investigate the details of the emergency. In the meantime, the government was assigned to take under control all matters related to provision of assistance and support for the families of the deceased. According to the head of state, the Chief Military Prosecutor's Office initiated a criminal case on the matter. The experienced staff of the Interior Ministry, National Security Committee and General Prosecutor's Office are also taking part in the investigation. Nazarbayev said that when such incidents occur in peacetime, it requires a thorough investigation. The president, however, did not mention anything about declaration of a national mourning or a curfew, something actively discussed on the internet.
The bodies of two more victims of the massacre at the Arkan-Kergen border checkpoint were found on Friday. This brings the official death toll to 14 soldiers and a game warden. One border guard is still missing. The burned remains were brought to Astana for a DNA examination following the instigation of a criminal case, said the National Security Committee Border Services Agency in a press release. Unlike experts and journalists, the authorities do not advance any theories as to what might have taken place at the border.
The number of casualties at Arkan-Kergen border checkpoint has reached 15 people. Earlier it was reported about 13 charred remains, and the border guard of National Security Committee on Friday informed about the bodies of two more soldiers found during cleaning of debris. The press release also states that the remains were brought to Astana for DNA testing. The investigation team is considering different scenarios of the incident. The Border Patrol is currently providing all the necessary aid and psychological support to the families of border guards whose charred bodies were found at the checkpoint. The relatives will be given an opportunity to travel to Astana for the DNA testing. While the authorities are working on the leads, the experts and journalists elaborate on their own theories, with the most frequent accidental fire, assault and hazing. Upon the discovery of two bodies of the three missing soldiers, the latter theory no longer looks plausible. The most popular theory on the internet is the assault on the frontier outpost. Yet this brings another question: who did it and why? Different groups are suggested as alleged saboteurs, from poachers engaged in illegal harvesting of medicine herbs in the area to drug smugglers. But some MPs believe the incident could have been caused by extremists. It could be a terrorist or extremist organization, but I don't think it's Al-Qaeda again. It's not the same level. I'm afraid this extremist organization is more influential and serious. At the same time, Russian experts still say politics was at the play here. After all, the tragedy occurred before the upcoming Beijing summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which will raise the issues of regional and border security. Nevertheless, political experts say that whatever is suggested by the official Astana, the first incident of such kind on the post-Soviet territory took its toll on the reputation of Kazakhstan as an oasis of stability in the Central Asian region.
The border checkpoint is now operating under Axis control, thus it is nearly impossible to approach it. While the investigation over the deaths of soldiers is underway, border guards decline to make any comments on the matter. We have a reporter on the scene with the latest updates on the situation.
At the moment, we're at the Alakol district near the Sarabukhtar border checkpoint, where 12 soldiers and a hunter died under mysterious circumstances. Unfortunately, it is impossible to access the scene. Police officers, together with border guards, stepped up the border security and created an information blockade. We are from Ucharal, so we don't really know much. We were sent here as a reinforcement. For now, it is problematic to learn the details of the investigation from the superintendent of the Ucharal Border Patrol unit. The superintendent is unreachable since the access to the village Dostar is restricted. Military forces have set up a checkpoint for the press and outsiders on the approach of the Dostar village.
Prosecution in the case of the former Zhanaozen mayor Orak Sarbapeyev asked the court to sentence him to 13 years in a maximum security prison. After reading the charges, the prosecutor addressed the judge and jury and asked them to pass a fair judgment. The ex-mayor's lawyers and sister completely refute the accusations, explaining to the jury that Sarbapeyev's guilt has not been proven during the course of the preliminary investigation. The second part of the hearing of arguments continued without the jury. After lunch, the state prosecutors requested 12 years of imprisonment under Part 4, Article 311, 12 years under Part 3, Article 24, and 10 years with confiscation of property under Part 5, Article 311. In total, the prosecutors asked 13 years of imprisonment for Sarbopev, with a subsequent 5-year ban on working in state agencies. The prosecution asked to remove Article 307 charges from the case due to the lack of evidence. The hearing of arguments will continue on June 4th. 9 years are given for murder, while Sarbopev, who never killed anyone, never took bribes, and never stole anything from anyone, got 13 years in a maximum security prison with confiscation of property. All these trials are just spectacles ordered from above. More than 40 oilmen came to the building of Zhanaozian city administration on Friday to meet with Mayor Sidik Baytrumov. People say that fellow residents are still arrested across town, with law enforcement officials now summoning family members of 37 defendants in the case of the December riots for questioning. Details in the next report.
Despite the scorching sun, the exhausted and slightly intimidated oil workers have gathered again near the building of city administration. They are demanding an audience with Sidik Baytrumov, the administration head, to tell him that officials from the National Security Committee keep placing pressure on the workers. Apparently, even 5 months after the tragedy in Zhanaozian, people are still summoned to the pier for lengthy interrogations at the NSC offices, and this is becoming a common thing. 2 or 3 people are detained daily and then placed behind bars. They call them several times for questioning and then simply lock them up. We have no time left to work. People are panicking and everyone is scared. That is the reason we came to the city administration today. We want to ask the head of administration to stop this, because people are on the verge of a new revolt. Our head of administration needs to tell these guys to stop. We're all scared. Who knows, we might be next to be arrested, because we were at the square among the oil workers on that day. All of us were on the square. I was there too. Does that mean I'm going to be persecuted? For what? If I voice my opinion, it does mean that I'm plotting something against the government. For the first time after the tragic events, the people of Zhanaozian gathered at the square again. Understandably, they are still afraid of sharing their views on camera, but off the record, they pour their hearts out. The father of this little boy is one of the 37 people on trial for mass riots. His mother has not told him yet that the father is not coming home anytime soon. She already knows what verdict will be passed on June 4th. That is the reason she and her son came to the city administration to speak about the difficulties of living without a breadwinner and to support the colleagues of her husband. After all the hassles, oilmen and their wives finally managed to get inside the city administration building. They were brought to the assembly hall with not enough seats, although that was the least of people's concerns. The main goal was to hear Sidik Baytrumov, who listened to what the people had to say and gave them a short and formal reply. I can't directly intervene in the work of other authorities, but I promise to pass your concerns to the appropriate agencies, or I'll pass them to my direct supervisor, the governor. If necessary, I may assist in setting up a meeting with him. This woman is mother of a defendant, although, like with many others, her son had nothing to do with the riots. He wasn't even at the square on the fateful day. With tears in her eyes, the old woman is answering the reporter's questions. Our children have spent a half a year behind bars and they're innocent. Why does it take so long to resolve this issue? Lock him up even for 25 years, but only if you can prove his guilt. But what have they done wrong? At a different trial, a policeman received just 5 years for killing a man, and the head of administration is now on trial facing a 5-year sentence, although he stole billions. The key question of the oil workers, which is yet to be answered, is why the National Security Committee still uses repressive measures against the people and whether someone will ever put an end to it. Meanwhile, the head of Zhanaozian city administration has another issue to resolve: how to support the 37 oil workers' families in case the breadwinners are arrested. It turns out that the NSC has now reached the fellow workers who had been allotting a certain amount of money from their salaries to support the families left without wage earners. Workers say, as of this month, the committee officials have strictly advised the management and accountants of oil companies against collecting money for the needy families.
The social resistance movement began collecting signatures in support of the accused human rights activist Vadim Kuramshin. Supporters are concerned about his fate and are calling on Kazakh authorities for his release, a stop to the criminal case against him, and a launch of a new investigation over provocations against the oppositionist. Along with Kuramshin's family, members of the movement addressed their request to international organizations and President Nursultan Nazarbayev.
As the activists report, the trial on Kuramshin's case is taking place with violations of Kazakhstan's as well as international law standards. The trial judge denies the jury's presence. The human rights activist was arrested on January 23rd in Taras on charges of extortion. Allegedly, Kuramshin demanded money from the Jump Drive with incrimination video against the prosecutor of the Zhambyl region's Korday district, Mukhtar Udirbayev. The oppositionist associates believe the case is nothing but a politically motivated persecution. This is not the only letter for which we collected signatures. Before that, we appealed to the ruling party and international community. This time, we initiated this letter and started collecting signatures because with the way this trial is progressing could very well mean that Vadim Kuramshin may become a political prisoner.
Unified national testing, the passing of which is required for high school graduates to receive their diplomas, kicked off in Kazakhstan on Friday, with around 4,000 students taking the test in Astana alone. This year, the Education Ministry took an extra step in ensuring there will be no cheating during the exams, to the point of causing enormous stress for the graduates. Rather appropriately, the Education Minister, who visited one of the locations, granted the students the right for one last phone call to their parents before the beginning of the test.
All entrances to this block of the Eurasian National University were closed since Friday morning because high school graduates are taking the UNT here. The Minister of Education himself came to witness the process. Bakhtjan Zhumagulov appealed to the parents first, saying he's just as worried about the children's stress. After that, the official proceeded to classrooms and talked with graduates, even attempting to joke. He told the students to call their parents and say that everything is fine, and then strictly prohibited his colleagues to expel kids from classrooms, even if they will be found using cell phones. I say there's no need for removing students from the classroom with shame. Just take away the cell phone and let them continue working. Anything could happen, so why should we act badly towards people? Zhumagulov appeared to be in a very good mood and praised the testing at every opportunity, noting that it bears more advantages. Besides, there's no way to change the mind of all critics when all is said and done. The minister likely hints at the communist MP Aykın Konurov. A few days ago, the parliamentarian raised doubts about the professionalism of the Education Ministry. The MPs were unhappy about the cellular communication jammers installed at the UNT sites. I propose to set up a qualification test for the heads of the Ministry of Education before their work leads to mass suicides after such arbitrary decisions. Ayar Satanova talks about the depressive moods among her peers. The student of the capital school number 38 has been sitting near the UNT site since morning. She will take the test in a few days, but she is here now to find out about conditions under which graduates go through the exam. What the girl saw did not please her. Many have suicide thoughts. They put so much pressure on us, and then 15 minutes remain before the test. They say everything will be fine. But in fact, the child is already psychologically damaged by the fear of failing the test and losing everything. Graduates are expecting the test results close to 5 p.m., but they were not posted even by 7. About 4,000 graduates took the UNT in Astana on the first day of testing. The pass benchmark, which guarantees a high school diploma, is at least 50 points.
School children in Almaty took the UNT on June 1st. This year, the exam itself did not undergo any major changes. However, the government made some concessions to college entrants. An additional hour was given to file an appeal. Luckily, the first day of testing in Almaty passed without incident. At least no information regarding violations was reported as of yet.
Some questions were really hard, harder than the ones in preparatory tests. What we covered in school and what was there, the questions were about the same, but their meaning was different. 2012 graduates had to face a lot of challenges, and foremost psychological ones. A real sensory attack awaited the graduates at the entrances to the UNT locations. Metal detector frames, surveillance cameras, a lot of security officers, and classrooms equipped with cell phone jammers. Not surprisingly, medical personnel was on duty in classrooms and front yards. Many students had to check their rising blood pressure and administered anti-anxiety medication. Many children report with headaches and anxiety. There were some children with toothaches, but we had nothing extraordinary. Toughness and novelty of the testing process, introduced by the Education Ministry, were also experienced by the first wave of South Kazakhstan graduates. More than 1,000 of them took the UNT at the local branch of the state university. At the entrance, they were met by security and education department personnel. As some parents observed, their children were checked too thoroughly. Many did not manage to cope with psychological pressure. They even lifted their skirts, short of checking their underwear. This has a very bad psychological effect on the children. Now the parents are going to stop by the administration that arrived from Astana and the ministry. The test problems were horrible. My best friend had a panic attack. She fainted. I forgot everything I learned right there. I could not even remember how to solve 2 + 2. I am sitting there. They're all watching us, you know, like they'd watch animals at the zoo. I can't even render all of this with words. I just feel horrible. I believe the UNC should be eliminated. I don't know what I will do now, how high my score will be.
A Chernoretsk schoolteacher was arrested in Pavlodar on Friday. The PE instructor is accused of failing to perform his duties and intentionally causing serious injury, resulting in the death of his underage pupil, Alexander Divin.
Last October, the young man died from heart failure and a ruptured liver cyst after a supposedly disciplinary talk with his teacher Alish Zhunusov in a school basement. The initial tests failed to clearly establish the cause of death. This February, Alexander Divin's body was exhumed, and only the 5th and final test confirmed the boy was killed. Even then, Alexander's parents had to demand the teacher's arrest in Astana. Alish Zhunusov was arrested earlier based on the investigation results, but Pavlodar District Prosecutor's Office later released him. The family of the deceased 11th grader appealed the decision at a higher court, prompting the General Prosecutor's Office to cancel the previous ruling and charge the teacher again. Given the severity of the crime and other circumstances, Zhunusov's restrictive measure has been changed to an arrest. As a result, on May 31st, Pavlodar District Court issued an arrest warrant for Zhunusov for 2 months.
Members of Kazakhstan's parliament inspected Almaty's innovational enterprises at the National Technology Park. Although substantial funds have been allocated for its development, as well as new perspective projects, not a single breakthrough has been achieved yet. Find out why in the next report.
First conceived as an equivalent to the Silicon Valley 6 years later, it seems that Almaty Technology Park is not anywhere close to its initial goal. The still operational Soviet equipment really raises the question of where the budgetary funds of over $5 million went after they were allocated last year for technical innovation. In the meantime, the technology park itself will soon expand its area with 163 additional hectares. It will feature 125 foreign companies and several universities. The municipal infrastructure, networks and even electric substation was built there for this purpose. The place now has a final price tag of $7.5 billion. Currently, we take up the territory of 213 hectares. Mainly, there will be Kazakh British University, International IT University of Kazakhstan, Kazakh Institute of Oil and Gas of Kazmunaygas and Kazakh Telecom. The park is also a kind of a free economic zone. All organizations housed there are exempt from paying taxes. As explained by one of the park leaders, Nurlan Ismailov, financial concessions are made to encourage the development of the IT industry. Hence why the local companies may not pay the rent for 10 years. But for some reason, the IT products created in such a comfortable zone are non-competitive. I'm not sure if there are Kazakhstan-made products that are actually exported, as we mainly have the service industry. For instance, the KT is serving our largest service companies, creating a competitive environment for the leading industries such as mining, oil and gas. It increases productivity in various sectors. Once we initiate our KT and start developing our own technology, implementing them in our commercial enterprises, then we'll talk about competitive products and supplying foreign markets. It is too soon to talk about it now. Parliament member Murat Abenov is no rookie in the IT field. He was the first MP to open a Twitter account and a blog. Abenov believes the main reason for the slow progress of the IT industry is the improper allocation of grants, as the government does not allow companies even with high intellectual potential to develop. We noticed that, first of all, one of the main problems today is the transparency of grant distribution, particularly in the IT field. Today, some companies received grants and those who didn't are not aware. Why where they refused one. In this regard, it is important to make it clear in order to have a fair competition. Second, the low awareness of our government agencies about projects and poor communication between the ministries. One could be working on something that was already done by another, while the third one is buying the same thing abroad. This clearly shows the lack of coordination. On its website, the technology park is set to become the smartest place in Central Asia by 2020, with a great potential for innovations. It is planned that the amount of direct foreign investment in the projects will reach over $675 million. But the question is still open whether it will progress by the same scenario as the inefficient allocation of grants, which the authorities are so concerned about.
The residents of micro-district Badam and Shymkent are facing serious problems with public services. They no longer have access to drinking water, road infrastructure, or uninterrupted gas and electricity. At present, thousands of families have to survive in similar conditions, while local officials claim they do not have sufficient budget funds to resolve the issues at hand.
Over 1,000 families of Badam micro-district are always living the life of austerity. It is not only money they have to save, but also the drinking water, which they have to buy. The bucket of water is 33 cents. Locals spend over 70 cents a day to provide their families with a sufficient amount. If we call an ambulance, they refuse to come here because there is no roads. Water is another big issue, as it is unsafe to drink it, and it can be used only for domestic needs. We have to buy drinking water and bring it over in jars. The roads is another serious problem. They have been destroyed when the authorities began to lay the water pipe infrastructure trying to help the residents. This lasted for 3 years, leaving not an inch of asphalt in place and still not bringing water to the population. These, however, are not all the problems of local residents. It takes over half an hour to boil the expensive water as the gas pressure is just way too low. The gas pressure is very low. Kazakhstan promised to set up gas control units, but we have seen none of them so far. We had to do it on our own. There are still more problems here, since power failure is a common thing. All household appliances are now broken due to the inconsistent and often low voltage on top of frequent blackouts. Residents say that they have repeatedly addressed their complaints to various agencies, but promises is all they got in return. The authorities say it is not their fault the buildings were constructed where pipes cannot be laid. They promise to solve problems only during election campaigns. The rest of the time, we are ignored. The authorities of Enbekshi district are aware of the outstanding issues. The head of the area optimistically reports that the water supply line will be laid in the near future. Then all gas pipes will be replaced, and after that all roads will be repaired. Unfortunately, the power problem will take the longest time to be fixed due to the tight budget. The issue will not be resolved until next year because of the budget. There is not enough money to resolve it now. There are 13 micro-districts in Shymkent that have similar problems with bad roads, electricity and water supply. Whether life in Badam micro-district will change for the better with at least some of the issues resolved will be clear only next year.
All copies of Sacha Baron Cohen's The Dictator were removed from Kazakhstan's theaters 2 weeks after the premiere. The film's distributor, Interfilm, refuses to comment on the matter, while chain representatives say it was their original plan all along, to run The Dictator for only 14 days and then replace it with another motion picture.
During its run, The Dictator was met with a conflicting reaction from the audience. Some found a lot of similarities between the fictional Admiral General Hafez al-Din and real persons. There were even calls to pull the movie from distribution, supposedly for considerations of political correctness. Noteworthy, in Turkmenistan, Belarus, and Azerbaijan, the comedy about the ruler of an oil-rich country was banned altogether. In Uzbekistan, a recut version missing over 10 minutes of footage was released, although it is not clear which scenes exactly were deleted.
The exhibits of the modern art Arbat Fest were vandalized in Almaty. The works of Russian, Kyrgyz and Kazakh artists were damaged by unidentified hooligans.
Festival organizers promised that the showpieces will be returned to the central street in the nearest future, this time with better security. To recount, last year there was an attempt to steal the installation of Kazakhstan's artist Moldakul Narimbetov, but the artist himself caught the thief.
This is all we have time for now. Thank you for watching, have a great weekend, and make sure to join us on Tuesday.